Welcome back, Idiot Squared viewers. This week, we're going to be taking a tour, an exploration, a journey through population. There's 8 billion people on this planet, and I'd like to know, what the hell is everybody doing? How many different kinds of people are there? What are the different things that these people do and spend their time doing? And there's 8 billion people. I'm just going to reiterate that. That is a ridiculous number of people. We're going to take an exploration through humans, population, distributions, the breakdowns of different jobs and things, processes, transformations that people make and do in their lives. It's going to be crazy, but it's also going to be fun. So stick with us and learn a little bit about humanity, I suppose. Polska, how are you?
I'm good, Guy. I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm excited about this topic, to be honest.
Do you think we can categorize people? Like, could we, how there's the personality tests? So there's 8 billion people, right? There's mad people in the world, but we could probably come up with a few, maybe not a few, but, a low number of categories of certain types of people, don't you think? Or do you think that there's too many unique people in the world to sort of categorize everybody? Like, what do you think about that?
All of those things are considered coarse graining. And that's all we can actually do is make coarse grainings. So also important thing to remember here is the map is never the territory. The categories are not the actual people. It's just a way to break them up and to talk about them. So yeah, we can easily do it. We can break it up into the binary, male and female. Don't get triggered.
Guy, careful,
people.
Guy.
But guess what? Even with that binary, there's actually a third. So you don't just have male and female, but you also have intersex. Intersex is about as common as the red-hairedness or red-haired people in the population. So that about the same percentage of people are born intersex, which means they are a bit of both, a bit of male, a bit of female. They typically are sterile. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. So yeah, just at like a super broad scale, we can just, we can bucket everybody into the human bucket, right? And then within that human bucket, we can have another breakdown, which is, sex. And then from there, we can start to do other things. But there's many different ways you can categorize people. You can categorize them based on their age. You can categorize them based on their height. You can categorize them based on their geography. You can categorize them based on their skin color. Lots of people tend to have a problem with that one. You can do all these different things, but it's just important to remember that the category is not the person. So, you can bucket people together, but just be careful not to get caught in buckets, if that makes sense.
Yeah. For some reason, I wasn't really thinking of it in such a general way, because you're right, you can categorize people that way. I should have. I don't even know how to explain what I was thinking, but it was going along. It was going along the lines of. I'm trying to think of a good example. You ever, like you're with a buddy, and then I'm just going to give you like a completely random scenario, right? So you're eating dinner with your buddy, and then some guy just comes to the table and he's talking to both of you, and he's annoying you guys, but you're not really sure what he wants. He just kind of started a conversation because he saw you and you made eye contact with them, and he just decided that he was going to approach you and start a conversation with you. And he keeps talking and talking and talking. And you're just trying to like, just make it known that, all right, like this conversation is kind of over. We'd like to get back to what we were doing. Can you go away without saying that? But buddy just doesn't get the hint, right? Finally, he leaves, and you look at your friend, and both of you are thinking the same thing. Like, oh yeah, this guy is one of those guys, right? So I was thinking like, I don't even know what the
somebody that people that don't respect other people's time and energy or space. A lingerer, a clinger, somebody that's lonely.
All right, so I guess like that's like one category.
Somebody who's looking for connection, and you just fucking told him to fuck off, like,
Because so this happened to me recently. I was at the airport. I was waiting for my family, right? And I haven't seen my family in a few years, so I was mad excited to see them. And it was the airport of Medellin. So I'm the only white guy there, right? And this other gringo spots me from across the fucking airport, and we make eye contact, and he starts to make his way over to me. And he says, "I've seen you before." And I'm like, I don't think so, man. I don't live here. You know, I'm from Cali. He's like, oh,
So-
maybe on Facebook. I'm like, well, I don't have Facebook. He's like, I don't know, man. I've seen you somewhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I wasn't being rude, but I was being short with this guy because I was concentrating on my family. They're coming out at any moment right now. And I'm imagining like the scenario of like how it's going to be. Am I going to cry? Like, who do I hug first? Like, all this fucking crazy shit going through my mind. And this guy just won't stop talking to me. And it gets to the point where he's even calling his friend that he's waiting for. And he's explaining to his friend, oh, I'm here with a Canadian guy. He lives in Cali. And he's giving like all the details, which he just learned about me, to his buddy. And I'm like, yo, what's up with this dude? Like, he's not autistic or maybe he is a little bit. But then again, like we all kind of are on the spectrum anyways, right? And then I'm like, yo, he's like a type of dude though. Like I've met so many dudes like this guy. And for me, he's like in this specific category of people. And I don't know how to put my finger on it, but there's so many that fit into the category. Dude, he even followed me to where I met my family. And then he started talking to my family as well.
How do you know this guy? Like, that's my son. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's where I was going with that. I'm sorry, man. You know how our brain works. Our brain's kind of very divergent as we've gotten to know doing this podcast. But yeah, so that's a category of dude. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So possibly, somebody that might be a little bit lonely, highly curious, definitely doesn't necessarily respect some personal boundaries, maybe. I don't know. But how about we give it a go throughout this pod? We'll see if we can come up with a nice sort of clear categorization there and see if we can bucket some more people in there. I don't know how to describe it. I don't have the words to describe it just yet. But yes, I do. I know that kind of person. For whatever reason, I think it's because you're like a nice, friendly, sort of approachable guy. People are just like, oh, cool, friend potential. When you were saying like, he's like, I've seen you before. It's like, just like, you look so common. You're just like, oh, sorry, man. I just confused you with like all the other white people I've ever seen.
Yeah, you're right though. I do get approached like,
guy, maybe he's a fan of the pod.
Who knows? Yeah, maybe. You never know, guy. You never know, right? One of our 10 viewers is him.
Yeah. He's viewer 7.
Real nice guy though. Shout out Shane, by the way. You're a real nice guy. Shane. Thank you for watching the pod, bro. Appreciate you. Just that's all. Don't have to say any word.
Welcome to Good Meals. I'm Reuben. I'm the founder and developer of Good Meals, and I'm here to introduce you to a smarter way to approach your diet. Forget the one-size-fits-all meal plans. Good Meals is about precision, personalization, and simplicity. It's not just a meal planner, it's a tool that adapts to you. Start by telling us about yourself. Your goals are unique, so should be your meal plan. Good Meals utilizes advanced AI to tailor every meal to your specific nutritional needs. Here's where it gets interesting. Our extensive database isn't just a collection of recipes, it's a culinary exploration. Whether you have specific dietary preferences or just what's available in your fridge, Good Meals finds the perfect recipe for you. And it's not just about variety. We focus on the nutritional value, ensuring that every bite takes you closer to your health goals. Join Good Meals today at goodmeals.health. It's not just about eating better, it's about revolutionizing the way you think about food. Because at Good Meals, every meal is a step towards a healthier, happier you. Okay.
Oh, I thought Shane was popping up, guy. Saw a screen pop up like, yo, Shane?
He just called in. He's actually on the line. We're going to get him in for a little guest appearance later. He's been blowing me up as well, guy. Okay, so I just want to talk about something that it's insane to me, okay?
Yeah.
Right? There's 8 billion people in the world, right? 10% of 8 billion is 800 million. That's still a lot of people, right? Now, let's just want to do the math on this, right? 8 billion people is so big. Like, you can't wrap your head around. We talk about this all the time on the pod, but like, we have to make coarse grainings. One of the reasons we have to make coarse grainings is because we just don't have the ability to like model these incredibly large things. Okay, so we've got to make equivalences between things. And this is where this categorization, this bucketing comes in, because it's the only way we can really sort of understand things. But we have to remember that it's always a coarse graining. It's never actually the complete fine grained story. That'd be too much to understand about everything. So I just wanted to break down just how big 8 billion is, right? So say you're a person and you live to be 80 years old, right? Okay, so an 80-year-old person. To account for leap years, we're going to say that there's 365.25 days a year. Okay, so then that way every 4 it gives us that extra day. Cool, so we've done that. So there's 29,220 days that you will live if you are 80 years old. So you will have been alive for 29,220 days. Okay. Now we know that there's 24 hours in a day, there's 60 minutes in an hour, and there's 60 seconds per minute. Okay. So if you are 80 years old, you will have been alive for 2,524,608,000 seconds. So if you were born, and from the moment you were born, every second of every day of your life, you met one person. So every second you met a new person, right? For the entirety of your life, you didn't do anything else, okay? You could still only get a quarter of the people. You could still only meet just over a quarter of the entire population of the planet.
Wow, there is a lot of us, eh? Like, really?
Yes. Isn't that crazy? So like, think about it. If all you did for 80 years, like we're not even 80 yet, and I feel like I've done a lot in my life. If you were meeting someone every single second, a different person every single second, you could only meet 2.5 billion people. And there's 8 billion of us on this planet.
I wonder how many Shanes I've met.
A handful. Not that many in the scheme of things, guy. Not that many. Our sample size is so small, right? Like, even if all you ever did was meet people, you still couldn't meet all the people. So you could never have met all the people, right? If you unless you lived to be like, okay, how old would you have to live to meet 8 billion people, bruh? What? Even if you live to be 150, okay, so we got to go up to like 280 years. Or 300, no, that's going to be way too much. Yeah, 280 it needs to be. Yeah. Now that accounts for some drift there. So you got to live to be like 280, and all you ever do, this is like, you can't eat, you can't drink, you can't do anything other than meet people. That's how old you'd have to be. If we factored in like sleeping and shit like that, bro, you'd have to live to be like 1,000.
Damn, let's do it, guy. I say we do it then. I say we put our minds to it and try to become the first people to meet everybody in the world.
You can't though. You can't.
Yeah, we're going to
yeah, but there's more people are being born every day, guy. Like, it's an unsurmountable task.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's try and like make a number there. Let's go for 8 billion then. Let's be the first people to meet 8 billion people. Imagine just trying to like keep a log of that as well. Like, imagine keeping a log. Like, that'd be so crazy. No, I know.
You can't. Because a log takes time to make. Like, this is the craziest thing, right? So, okay.
Yeah.
So it's just like, we all walk around thinking that we're like, yeah, we've all got a world model, right? And we like to think that our world model is pretty accurate, okay? But our world model is based off such a small sampling of the world, of the universe, right? Like, it's so small that we can't even meet all the people. Like, that's how bonkers this is. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to go from this sort of numeric, like this sort of approach, like where we sort of like go in and just see the ridiculousness of this, if that makes sense.
All right, so I got you.
Even if you live to be 100, bro, you can only like, at the best you could ever possibly hope to achieve it to be like 3 billion. And there's no chance you're even getting there because like you sleep 8 hours a day. So, minus that, and it just grows massively. Anyway, You go.
No. I was just gonna say I'll try my best to stay on topic, but I know that's not going to happen because each time we do, we start these pods, I sometimes think of a direction, and then I realize that Reuben has a completely different direction of this podcast. Like, okay, fuck, I gotta switch up like what I was thinking, and that's how I get into the divergent shit. But anyways, I heard like mad times that the perfect amount of people in your sort of not inner circle, but in your like realm of community or something is 150 people. For some reason, that number I've heard come up many times. I heard it, I don't know, a bunch of podcasts. I've heard on the Reuben podcast before. I think you probably have heard it too. I think we brought it up maybe once before, where it seems to be a community, I don't know if to call it like a dwelling or whatever, of 150 people seems to be optimal in terms of the human experience, making just, I don't know, or it was that way back in the day.
Not necessarily optimal. I think you've conflated a couple of things there, but the 150 number comes from, it seems to be like 150 is kind of like the sort of upper limit of what we can sort of keep a track of within ourselves, so to speak. Well, like, you can sort of know and have a certain level of relationship with like 150 people, right? And it's sort of evolved from the sort of small communities or small groups of people over time. And now with the internet and social media and all these different things we've spoken about before, we can be so much more interconnected. We can have access to what's happening all around the world and what's happening to so many more people that we sort of, it's tough to keep track of, and it's also tough to manage, right? Like, we can see horrible things that are happening in some other place completely on the other side of the world from where we are. And that can now affect us. Whereas before that wouldn't have affected us because we just didn't have access to that. We couldn't have seen it. We didn't even know it was happening, so to speak. Whereas now our sort of zone of awareness has expanded massively. And it can be overwhelming. It can be really tough to keep track of. Just think like how many friends or people that you've met, names do you remember? Right? Like, just off the top of your head, like, it's not that many. Like, you probably don't have the ability to store more than 100 or 150 different people's names or, memories, higher fidelity memories of people in your mind. Like, it's really hard to deeply know 1,000 people.
It's funny because I remember, like before, back in the day when I was immature, I thought being like popular was cool, right? Like, just knowing mad people, like a lot of people was cool. But then like as I got older, I realized that no, it's much more like pleasing to have strong connections with fewer people. And even if we could meet like 8 billion people, it just wouldn't be like a very good life experience because you wouldn't be able to make a deep connection with any of them because you wouldn't have enough time, right? I mean, obviously, definitely. I know that you know what I'm getting at. So that's probably another reason for the 150 as well, because how many people can you actually have a deep connection with, right? Like, if you have one person in your life, you're probably lucky, I would say. I don't think everyone, I don't know if everyone does, but I think if you have like a deep connection with one person, like just one, that's lucky. But if you have a deep connection with many people, like that's that's phenomenal. That's amazing. And that's, I think, sometimes hard to do, which could be another category of a person. People that just live in not the superficial, but how people who can just do small talk, but they're unable to get past the small talk. And even if you ask them like a question that goes deeper than the small talk, they have small talk type of answers, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think for that category of person, they have maybe possibly never developed like a deep connection with someone, so they don't know how to manage that, or they don't know how to.
They might not have the capacity. might not have the capacity. So there's going to be a trade-off, right? So if you can have a very, very, very deep connection with one person, right? It'll depend on like how, similar you are in a sense, because that will make that depth of connection easier, right? Because the similarity, it's easier to make the connection, if that makes sense. Like there isn't as much of a translation language between the two. If you're sufficiently different from somebody, doesn't mean you can't develop a deep connection. It would just take time and energy, right? Because you've got to come up with the sort of connections or the translation languages between the different points of contact or points to connect on or relate to each other on. There's also a trade-off, right? With if you want to have seriously deep connections with many people, there's a point at which you can't because of how much time and energy it takes to develop deep connections. All right. So if you want to have lots of friends, so to speak, you have to sacrifice some depth to get the numbers, right? So it's this famous problem, depth versus breadth, right? This is the same thing in science. Like people can get very deep into one thing, but by getting really deep into one thing, they sacrifice a breadth of knowledge. They have a depth of knowledge, but they don't have a breadth of knowledge. And so, it appears as if, because we're computationally bounded and we're finite in that regard, there is a trade-off. There is only so deep and so broad that you can get at any one time, right? You can give up broadness for depth, and you can give up depth for broadness, vice versa, right? But there would be like a sweet spot where you have a sufficient amount of depth and a sufficient amount of breadth. That to me is what I try and go for. Not too much of either one, but a nice balance between the two. And there's times when you have to switch that, right? Where you have to go a bit deeper and then come back out and go a bit broader. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So
I wrote a little number up here, which is 0.000000001% of people. These are like outliers, and we can go even more extreme. Like we can add heaps more zeros there, and we're going to say that this is equal to this times 0.3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 80 people, right? These motherfuckers are going to be intense on both ends of the spectrum. So like this is like the top 80, the best of the best of the best of the, like that many zeros.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Michael Jordan, for example.
Yeah. So how we have like the hold on, boy, I got a good screen share for you. 1 second. I just got to switch that. Okay, here we go. Okay, I got to screen share this. I got to screen share my window. This is a very famous graph. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a famous meme. I've adjusted this so it says like entropy zero, and so much entropy for the people in the middle. But this is a bell curve, right? That's what I'm really trying to show. It shows the distribution of things. So if you put the 8 billion, the population, the bulk of people would fall in this middle distribution. And the further out to the edges you get, you're getting closer to these 0.00. Like this is the 0.1%. This is the 1% up here, or 0.1% positive, if that makes sense. Right? So the further out in the tails we're getting, the freakier, or the smarter, or the dumber, or the kinder, the more generous, the more evil, the violent, etc. Like it's just in the tails, you're getting to the extremes. That kind of makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So back to this spreadsheet, right? If we go to this extreme, there's 80 people in the world that are probably going to be like the kindest of the kind, right? Like these are the outliers in kindness. Okay. And then on the other end of that, you've got evil, right? Or just like crazy in that regard, violent, whatever. And there's going to be like 80 of them. And they're going to be so much more of that thing than anybody else, if that kind of makes sense. So, does that sort of make sense?
Yeah. And so like you could like have this distribution curve for all types of shit.
Anything.
Like,
That's right.
You mentioned kindness and evilness, right? But I mean, wow, like you could take any sort of trait or any sort of talent and place it on that distribution curve. Yeah, that's crazy. So are you getting at that everybody could have something unique about them then?
Yeah, I think we live in a high enough dimensional sort of space for that to be true. And that could be the real sort of, sort of, I don't know if it's a hack, but like finding a subset of things that you truly love or are passionate about or whatever, and then combining all of those things together would make you the outlier with that unique set of sub-interests or goals, right? So everyone can be unique or special in that sense. But I think it's just an interesting way to think about it. So we could do this with strength, right? So, like your Ed Cohen's or, I don't know, recent good power lifters, but like, the strongest person in the world is the one, right? Like it's, you get this all the way down to the end and they're the strongest. And there's a distribution of strength below that, if that makes sense.
Oh, the mountain, Bjorn.
Yeah, Hafthor Bjornsson.
Yeah, that guy.
So you can do this for height. We can do this for anything, right? Like it's an interesting way to sort of think about it. Do you know what the population split is?
Like female, male?
Yeah, male to female.
I think there is a tad more women. No, wait, no, because of what happened in China with the one kid policy back in the day, most people were deciding to keep males. So because they have such a large population in China, I think that it would kind of throw the statistics in favor of males. So I think there's more males than females in the world. But I don't know what it would be. Maybe like 52-48, 51-49. Do you have like a figure, by the way?
I'm trying to get one. I'm just having a quick look here.
Yeah, just because of that one child policy, you know what I mean? I think that would skew it.
Could have skewed it massively.
Yeah, I think so. And then who else? I think that's the only. I don't know if any other country had that policy. Did you know that recently India took first place for the greatest population in the world? They've overcome China now, and they also have a much younger average population age. I think the average Indian is 25 years old, and the average age population or whatever is in China is 35. So India is much younger, and they now have the greatest population in the world, which is pretty crazy. It's like over 1.5.
India is wild.
What's that?
I said India is wild.
India is wild?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, I think it's above 1.5 billion now or something. I can't remember. But like if there's 8 billion people in the world, like 40% of them live in India and China. Well, not that much, but it's just crazy how much of the population lives in two countries.
Yeah. Okay, 1.7%. Okay. This is not going to work. All right.
Yeah, I can't really...
can you see my screen?
Yeah, can you zoom in a bit? I can't really see what your Virgin there, guy. I can just...
Sir, I can zoom for you.
Sweet. Zoom. Or, was that a Mazda commercial? Zoom.
Potentially, yeah.
I think it was a Mazda.
Let's have a look here. All right, so this is... so this isn't going to equal 1, right? This is we need to account for this. So we'll say that that's like 50-50. So we just say like 0.8 of this, 48.8. So we just go 0.4888, and then we'll go 8 off this. So it's 49. Okay, here we go.
So what is it?
So there's slightly more males in the world, right? It's typically, like when you read the statistics, it says it's just over 50%, right? And there's just under 50% females. But if we account for intersex, we just made a couple of adjustments. We kind of just took it off a bit. So there's close to 50% males, under 50% females, and 1.7% intersex people. All right, they're born. So if we just do, which is this times this, boom, equals this times this equals boom equals this times this equals this, boom. Okay, so this is mind-blowing, right? Also, I want to look at how many people are born each day. Okay, cool. So we have the following, right? There's 3,968,000,000 males in the world. There's 3,896 females. So it's close, right? The ratio is pretty close to 50-50, but there are just slightly more males. And then there's 136 million people. No, wait. Is this right? 3,968,000,000?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. How many billion?
Or wait, because it's what is it? It's 0.1. No, it's 1.7%. You said, or is it 0.17%? Because if it's 1%, that sounds about right. 1.7%. Doesn't it? Yeah.
I think we got out.
Yeah, it does.
Hold
Yeah, it does.
up here. Yeah, I think I might have my zeros messed up. 8 billion.
So 8 billion, it should be it should be 80 million. Then 1% of 8 billion is 80 million, isn't it?
8.1 billion. Okay, just
do that right.
Sec.
Is that right, Rubes? 1% of 8 billion is 80 million?
I don't know. Give me 1 sec. I'm just trying to get my zeros calibrated.
All right. I'm actually gonna. I don't know why I'm having a hard time with this. I used to be good at math back when I needed to be. Shit, guy, I got it right. Yeah, 80 million.
Okay.
So 1.7% of 8 billion will be like 150 million people around that. So, or no, less, a little bit less. Anyways, that's like, all right. The population of America is like 350 million, right?
Correct.
Okay. The population of Colombia is like 77 million. All right. So like 2 Colombias or half of America.
Yeah. Are born intersex.
If you think about it that way, that is a lot.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So now, right?
Yeah.
So let's just have a look here. And have you seen the graph for the world population?
No. What the
Boom,
fuck?
guy.
Damn, dude.
So like, there's almost been like no people.
Whoa.
And then we have exploded with people. Like,
what year did that start happening in?
Well, the year 0.
Oh, we're going by
190 million people in the year 0, right?
Yeah.
So, like that's almost the amount of intersex people born every year now there were back in the year 0. And then from there, it's really started to kick. But like, it kind of went bonkers. Black Death, mid-century, Black Death killed 200 million. So boom, we see a dip and then just off to the races, guy.
Like the industrial age, maybe?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For sure. The industrial age. This technology has enabled huge amounts of this.
That's wild.
Right?
There are
so
graph.
many people. Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's superimposed either.
Time it took for the world population to increase by 1 billion. So all of human history up to 1803. It took all of human history up to 1803 to get to 1 billion people. Then it took 124 years, 1803 to 1927 for it to get to 2 billion. 33 years in 1920, from 1927 to 1960, there was another billion people added. And then it took 15 years, 12 years, 12 years, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, 18 years, and they reckon 32 years. So we're slowing down. So we sort of accelerated massively, and then we sort of saturated. We sort of hit the so-called limits, and then it started to creep back up again.
Well, this is why a lot of people are talking about a population crisis, right?
Yeah.
Because like, look at all of the jobs, the houses, the schools, all of the facilities, everything that it takes to survive and live have been built. And if we don't continue keeping up with the population to fill those jobs, fill those schools, fill those facilities, everything, then there could be an economic crisis due to a population decrease, even just like a slight one.
Yeah. This is where people are doing this robotic stuff, and then the AI stuff is coming in, because there is a group of people that believe that people won't be as valuable moving forward, so to speak. So that's kind of scary too, in a sense, but also can be a fantastic thing, because it can free humans up to do completely different things by not having to do the menial tasks and the menial labor and continue to do the things we've always done. It potentially frees us, could also eradicate, but potentially frees us up to do completely different things. But yes, this is what you also see is in the developing world, the birth rates tend to start declining, right? So the more wealth and education people get, typically the less children they're having. There are obviously exceptions to those rules, but that is just broadly what you sort of see. Okay.
Sounds like wealth sounds like wealth and AI are responsible for a lot of abortions, guy.
Well, or just not even having kids, right? So a lot of people, once they get a certain level of education and skill, they just don't have as many of them. This is a crazy stat too. Almost half of all people in the world live in these 7 countries: China, India, United States of America, and Indonesia.
Wow,
that's bonkers.
That is crazy.
The 2 outliers there are China and India, and I believe you're correct. India has leapfrogged China, correct?
Yeah, recently, within like the last couple of years, I think.
Yep.
Well, and they also have a much younger average population as well.
Bonkers.
Yeah, guy, and they're producing the best engineers as well right now too. I heard they have some outstanding
big
universities.
In computer science. Yeah, big in computer science. Lots of stuff happening. India just passed a weird law, or they're trying to pass a weird law, so that you have to, if you're going to make an AI model, it has to go through the government. You have to get all these checks and balances, and there's not going to be open source AI in India, which is crazy, considering the talent that's there that would be able to do amazing things with that open source.
They're going to lose a lot of people.
Yeah. It's bonkers, right? Like there's so many people.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to think, kind of look at, I'm just going to zoom out of that, sorry, and kill that screen share, is like, how many like police are there in the world? How many farmers are there in the world? This is very hard to do, obviously, but like how many taxi drivers, how many plumbers, how many electricians, how many, because when you think about humanity at that scale, you realize humanity is a giant organism, right? Like it's like a meta-organism where in the human body, you have like your vascular system, right? That delivers blood to your body. Okay. And that could kind of be considered like, your plumbing system or your electrical grid, right? And so what you realize is at a higher level of abstraction, there's also a way to see that that's what people in society are doing. Like they're going about their tasks as well to create this sort of meta-organism that is society. But we have like analogous things in our bodies, right? Like we have cells that do certain jobs. We have proteins that do different things. Those little proteins could be considered people, right? Little workers that are doing a certain thing. And the cells could be businesses. And then the organs could be like industries, and so on and so forth, right? So you sort of see how that sort of maps.
Yeah.
And so it's mad interesting when you think about that. There are ways you can sort of come up with these coarse grainings that keep that analogy, or that sort of work with that analogy. And it's just interesting that there would be literal, millions, hundreds of millions of people doing very similar things, but that are completely disconnected from each other in a way.
What would you say is the most popular job, like by number? Like if you were to do like job by population, what would you say is number one?
I have no fucking idea because I don't know everybody. I haven't been everywhere. I don't know. But like off the top of my head, my guess, the most common job would probably, oh man, that's a tough one. Most common job in the world. I'm trying to think of like India and China. I don't know. Would it still be something agricultural?
Okay, so I'll share my screen with you. I didn't even have a guess either. It's such a strange question, like to think about.
Yeah. Who the fuck would ask that?
An idiot. So, can you see it?
Yeah.
These are the occupations that employed the most people in 2020 for states, or 2022 for national. You can view this list by, okay. So number one, retail salespersons. So people work in like department stores or like, yeah. And then home health and personal care aides. Wow, it's a lot.
Joe, that's it. Okay, just one sec. We just got to stick on that for a second.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating thing that has emerged. Like that's really started to grow in the size and scope of it is personal care. Like how many people are now helping, like their job is to help other people that can't help themselves. We spend a lot of time and energy and human resources, but particularly this is more of an emergent phenomena in the developed world where we have the sort of spare resources, time and energy to do this. Like in Australia, this is a huge thing. We have the NDIS, the National Disability Initiative Service, and it is massive. The government spends billions of dollars every year for this kind of thing. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to do, but it also comes with its own problems and sort of repercussions. So for some people, there are like 4 or 5 full-time carers looking after one person. And that's a lot of resources that as a country, as a society, we spend on doing that, which is an interesting thing because we have not had the luxury to do that. And it absolutely is a luxury, which is very interesting when you think about it. But please continue.
Yo, you're right, dude. And because in most of the developed countries, they went through the baby boomer phase. Like I know Canada and America did. Did Australia as well have that baby boomer?
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah.
So I'm assuming Europe did as well. I don't know, just assuming.
I'm pretty sure everyone that was the part of the times. Isn't that a generation, the boomers?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
It's like a specific period in human history. Yeah.
So now there's so many older people, and not all of the boomers aren't, at that age yet. But
it's getting there.
It's getting there, right?
This, if you look at the population distributions for many countries, you sort of see this. It's like it's big at the top. The aging population is really quite large, and the younger population is quite small. So it looks like it's very top heavy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess this
is what they talk about, the collapse.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it makes sense that is becoming one of the most popular jobs, right? Personal health care aides, because there's so many boomers that are needing care, and boomers also have money. Like that generation, like they have a lot of wealth. That generation, like a crazy amount of wealth, and they also, I would say, the boomers would probably were around during like the peak of it all, in terms of, job.
Yeah, they got all the property. Massive economic booms, man. Like property went from being like I've got a mate who bought a house here in Australia, and he paid like $30,000 or something. And then like now that same house now would be worth like, $800,000 or like 500, at least $500,000. You know what I mean? Like they've seen huge asset appreciation. not only just in real estate, but in stock market and all the rest of it. Like this has been unprecedented up times.
Our generation, we still have, I just want to say this because, boomers are probably sick of hearing this shit, but like our generation, like we have it really, really well in comparison to generations that came before the baby boomers. They were just at the peak, right? But if
they got the run up. They got the run up to that peak in terms of those aspects. But I think we live in a better time now.
That's true. Yeah, in a lot of ways, we do. It might. Yeah, a lot of people complain, oh, it's more difficult to make money. That might be true, but I mean, life is fucking. It's
It should be difficult. That's the whole thing. That's what makes it special.
Yeah, there you go.
If it was all easy, it'd all be boring.
Well said. Well said. Exactly. So, where was I going with this? Yeah. Okay, back to this list then. Yeah, because there's going to be so many jobs available for that type of care. So now, like, seeing this makes sense. The only guess I would have had maybe was nurses. I don't know why. There seems, I've met so many nurses, and I just feel like that's like a really popular job. But that's at number 6. Cashiers, number 5. That actually makes sense. But that's kind of strange still, because they've opened a lot of self-checkout places in a lot of department stores.
Yeah,
I think pretty much everyone, they're getting rid of them. You mean?
Yeah, they're trying to get the machines to do it, but people keep stealing from the machines, so they might have to bring people back. Can I just pause on that for 1 second?
Yeah,
sorry.
No,
I just got to do a rant on this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so back in the day, before the boomers, people would, have their own sort of vegetable gardens, and like there was market stalls and like little shops here and there or whatever, but like pretty much people had to kind of not fend for themselves, but fend more for themselves, right? People were a little bit more self-sufficient. They weren't as dependent. Then all of a sudden, they started industrial farming and things like that started to get better, so people could produce things at mass scale. So what that did is it freed people up. So instead of spending the time and energy growing their own fruits and vegetables and animals and whatever else, they could rely on somebody else to do that and then pay them money to exchange for it, right? So then they could spend their time doing other things. And so back in the day, like as supermarkets started to emerge, they really had to convince people, they had to change the behavior of the population at that time, right? So back in the day with the supermarkets, they would provide an amazing service, okay? So you might not remember this, but it's in the back of my mind when they used to have people that would pack your bags for you. All right. You used to be a bagpacker.
For 5 fucking years, guy.
Okay, nice.
And I had to push carts.
So this is in our time. Yep, there we go. So remember that level of service? All of that was part of trying to change people's behaviors, and you have to incentivize that behavior change, right? So going to the supermarket, they did all of that for you because they were trying to get your business, right? Because people were still able to do their own things, so to speak. It was like they had to provide that extra level of service to make it make it so enticing and so attractive to people to come and do it. Okay, because they wanted to change that behavior. Then they changed people's behavior sufficiently so that we became more and more sort of reliant on supermarkets, right? And it sufficiently changed our behavior that over those generations, we stopped learning those other skills. We stopped doing those other behaviors like growing our own and being a little bit more self-sufficient in that regard. So then we became dependent upon the supermarkets. And then since we've become dependent, have you not noticed that they're just starting to take away all of the service and the convenience that used to be what they offered? So what they did to get everyone on board has now changed because they've got everyone on board. They know that they've got you. So now they can take away all of those extra little services and make more money essentially, and provide a lesser level of service because they can, because they know that the behavior has changed sufficiently across those generations that it's going to be really hard for people to go back.
That is crazy, eh? Yeah. That's like one of the negative sides of capitalism. Even though I like capitalism, it is sort of like one of the negative things that most businesses do: increase prices, decrease quality over time.
it definitely, there is a space for that. And then, but then the beautiful thing about it is they typically die off, and that creates opportunity. So like, this is just the nature of cycles, I would say, right? Like, because the craziest thing about all of that is, by supermarkets doing what they've done and providing those services, it frees humans time and energy to do other things, which has allowed so much more expansion across so many other dimensions, which is contributing to the growth of knowledge and the growth of our quality of life over time as well. So yeah, there's trade-offs, right? But there is, it's just the nature of cycles. Like, you'll go through this time. Like, imagine being back in the day where like, you spent 25% of your time worrying about food. Okay. Then all of a sudden these supermarkets come out, and now instead of spending 25% of your time, you can spend 2% of your time or 5% of your time on the food, and you can go and you can have it, and it's all packed beautifully for you. And then you can take it home, you can put it in your refrigerator, all this sort of stuff. Amazing. And now you've got all that extra time and energy to do these different things. That would have been an amazing time to be alive. And we've still had it really good. It's only now we've peaked in that sense, and now we're dropping back off. And so the service isn't necessarily going to be provided like that. But with robots, that could all come back online, right? Because it can become more efficient in that sense.
Oh, true. Good call. Good call. I heard the TSA is starting to experiment with, it's like a self-checkout type of thing with security at airports. So you would self-check your luggage, or you would just put your luggage into the scanner yourself. And then you would go into a separate scanner, and it would scan your body, and the computer would tell you if you passed or not. So for example, if you have a watch on your wrist, it'll say there's something on your wrist, and it'll like flash red, and it'll say you have to exit, take whatever is off your wrist, put it through the scanner, and go back into the machine. So it does a body scan again. And if there's an issue, you can call to a call center, where a TSA agent will help you with whatever it is you need assistance with.
Or a bot, where a bot does that.
Or a robot does that, yeah.
Yeah. So like, okay, this is going to be a slight tangent or divergent moment, but you know how people talk about like the AIs will take over and all the rest of it? We're going to be the ones that do that. Like, by doing this with all the automation and everything else, we're getting rid of the humanity and everything. And you're putting it down to a set of like these very strict rules, and that doesn't make for a great experience. There's no room for movement in any of those things, right? Like, if it doesn't
exactly
meet the criteria, the rule that the machine has been given, then there's no getting around it. So like, there's a whole bunch of problems that happen with that. But the other thing is, like, by doing all of that, by automating so many of these processes with machines, we're actually in a sense it could be thought of as enslaving ourselves to the machines. But then on top of that, there's all these crazy hacks that you can do. So I don't know if you've seen this with object recognition with AI. So AI object recognition is really good and can be very useful, right? So lots of people have used it in their crops to sort of identify, rotten food or food that doesn't meet a certain criteria. And that's saved having to have like all these people, do that picking and choosing. So there's some use cases where it's fantastic. You can do it for face recognition. You can do it for, recognizing people on cameras and traffic lights and all that kind of, like, China uses it big time to provide like jaywalking tickets and shit like that. It's massive, right? It's massive in China. Like, if you jaywalk, within like 3 seconds, your WeChat gets deducted. Okay. So bonkers stuff, right? But you can hack this stuff, right? So there's certain patterns or certain things you can put on yourself, certain clothing that you can wear that makes you invisible to the AI. All right. So the camera see, like, you show up on the camera, but because of the little pattern that you've got, the AI can't detect you because you sufficiently move the pixels in a way that just tells the AI that there's nothing there. So it's an interesting thing. So you can, there will be in the future, there will be like, like with vampires, they had the day walkers, the ones that could walk out in the day and not be seen or not die. Like, there's going to be classes of people who will like want to be anonymous from the surveillance system, who are essentially like invisible to the machines. Kind of cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. There'll be heaps of other ways. They'll use like, They'll just expand it. So instead of being just like, at one level, like, just image based with a camera, it'll be like infrared and all sorts of other layers to sort of fact check and make sure that you can't just escape it that way.
I could totally see me getting a face tattoo that would fuck with the facial recognition cameras, and then the system operating or the system gets updated the next day, and now it can detect my face again.
Okay, so but the other thing about that too is like, okay, so if you do that, right? Cool, you don't get recognized by facial detection, but you can't go anywhere by plane or anything else if they're going to have these robots doing it.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Because
Yeah.
it just won't pick your face up, and so then
that's true.
You imprison you. Anyway, this is all crazy stuff that we're going to have to deal with in the coming years, and it's going to be bonkers. But okay, let's just bring this back to this population stuff. You were going down, you were showing the statistics and we're going down a different tangent.
No, that was it. I just wanted to say that was it. That like, even if you look at the top 6, it's all service
in the US?
sector. It says 2020 for states or 2022 for national. Okay, yeah. So for the states, I think. Yeah. But if you look at the top 6, it's all service. It's all service sector. Retail, personal aid, general and operations managers, fast food, counter workers, cashiers, registered nurses. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's funny how you were saying, "Oh, could agriculture still be in there?" But it's not, and it makes sense because you could have like a few people running a farm that have this, all of the state of the art equipment that will, get the fields ready.
Jobs.
Yeah, so they can like grow enough food for a mass population. Like a few people can grow enough food for like a serious population. So it's probably why we're not going to see any type of agricultural work, in the top here. But it's all like, it's just, most of it is just service sector jobs.
It's crazy.
And look, for a retail salesperson, no formal education required. So the most popular position, you don't need any education. Number 2, personal care aides, high school diploma or equivalent. And then number 3, you need a bachelor's degree. Fast food, no formal education. So look at the most popular jobs you don't need education for. And which makes you want to bring up this other point, is that when AI does start to take certain jobs from people, the safest people are probably the ones that don't have a formal education, because they're going to have to be doing the jobs that the AI won't be able to do, like, during the beginning stages. Right?
Yeah, until robots come online.
Until robots come online. Yeah. So like if you work in construction, for example, your job's probably going to be safe for a long time. I think that's like a good example. Like,
So here's an interesting thing, right? So employment in agriculture globally has been on a massive decline over the last 25, 30 years. So in 1991, it was like 43% of the world's like jobs were agriculture based. Okay. Now it's down to about 26%.
Oh,
and
shit.
Probably lower.
Oh, shit. It's actually higher than I thought it was going to be. I thought you were going to say something like 3% for some reason.
No, there's still so much value in people. And also because labor is so cheap in some countries. It actually still is economically viable to have the people do it instead of the big machines and the robots. But there's also so many things that we haven't been that just isn't possible with technology just yet. And also it can be cost prohibitive, right? So unless you have the money to invest in the machines and the rest of it, it's still easy to just get people to do it. And some land is just incredibly difficult for machinery to operate on. Like some land can only be farmed by people currently.
Yeah, that's true. It would probably be lower in the States and like a much more developed country, in comparison to like a second or a third world country. Because I'll just tell you quickly like a experience I've had. Colombia is really developed, right? I don't we can't consider it like a first world nation, but it's practically there. Like it's very, very developed.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed is that, so for example, in Canada, right? If someone is going to cut down a tree, what will they usually use, would you say?
A chainsaw.
A chainsaw, right? Guess what a Colombian uses to cut down a tree?
A
Like your
saw.
average Colombian person.
A machete.
A machete. Yeah. So I see my neighbors doing this all the time, right? Like if they want to trim a tree or cut down a tree or something, they all use machetes. And everywhere you go, you see people using machetes to cut down a tree. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, although that Colombia is really developed, it's not considered like a first world country, even though, and if, you know, if you traveled here and you went to like Medellin, like the nice place of Medellin, you would totally think it is. But it's just interesting because technologically, not all the countries are up, are on par. Because it's just interesting. Like in Canada, you would generally use a chainsaw. And if you don't have a chainsaw, you'd ask to borrow your neighbor's chainsaw because no one is going to cut down a tree with a machete. That's not even like a thought that people would have. But in Colombia, that's the first tool people think of. Like, oh, I need to
Yeah.
get a machete. And if they don't have one, they ask their neighbor for a machete. But to ask someone for a chainsaw, no one has chainsaws here. Like I've never seen anyone use a chainsaw.
Yeah. Okay. So my mind's just thinking like, okay, how much of that is to do with the different types of trees and fauna that is around there? Like Colombia is a bit more jungly. So a machete, cutting vines and the trees might not be as thick and as big or as hardwoody, right? Like it could be softer woods and different types of
Yeah, that's a good point.
flora and fauna, foliage. What do you call trees at that
Fauna
scale?
and yeah, I know what you mean.
Flora and fauna. Yeah, anyway, plant stuff. And maybe in Canada, it's just there's the bigger trees, harder wood. So you kind of need that chainsaw as well. Is it just that you can actually get away with a machete? But yeah, the manual labor is probably more common there still versus like leveraging machinery and technology in the more developed countries.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
I was trying to get it. Yeah.
Yeah, so people probably walk more in Colombia, relative to Canada, where people probably drive more because more people have cars, and the cities and the geography have evolved and the infrastructure has evolved to be more friendly towards cars. Whereas like in Indonesia or Bali, it's mainly scooters, right? Like walking places isn't necessarily that easy. So it's optimized for scooters essentially. Driving cars is not ideal. But if you have a scooter, and most people do, low cost form of travel, you can get around. But the infrastructure is built around scooters. So when you get too many cars, it just kills it.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so let's wrap this back in. Okay, so we didn't get anywhere near the amount of things I wanted to discuss. Got way too sidetracked, but that's okay. Okay, so like, isn't it just insane? Like there is going to be a huge amount of people in the world that are all doing different things. Okay. Like, and there's so many different categories, right? Like we can just at a broad level, we can talk about like services. Okay. And then, so yeah, there's so many different services that are sort of essential. But if we kind of think of it like the human body, you have like, your nervous system is like the electrical network. Your vascular system is like the plumbing, like plumbing services essentially. Your digestion is like the building construction, and then the waste industry, right? Like, your shitting or digestion is like the waste industry, like garbage tips and places like that. The construction industry is like all the little things that are building the body, right? Maintaining the different structures and the rest of it. And then you have the people. The people are like all the different proteins that are doing different things in the body. Proteins, vitamins, minerals, that kind of stuff. And then the vitamins and minerals would actually be resources. And cells are kind of like businesses. And then organs are kind of like industry, right? So you can have like the liver that processes certain things, which could be like your sort of your judicial system, judicial system, or your like system of law. And that's kind of like the operating framework for people. Anyway, you can do all of that. Then you've got like you've got your medical staff, right? They're kind of like the white blood cells and all those different things that are like repairing people and fixing the things that break and whatever else. And then you've got your fire brigades, right? That go and fix things that are overheating or burning, and so that's also like your immune system in your body. You've got the army, which is also like an immune system in a sense, because they stop people from invading your borders, so to speak. But there's just like all these different analogous things, and there's just a ridiculous amount of people doing very similar stuff in different spaces, different geographies, but like of the same abstract conceptual purpose, if that makes sense.
Does make sense.
Man.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. It is interesting to see it in that sense, to see it in that sort of lens or perspective. We seem like it's just like human nature to sort of construct things in a similar way to how the body is constructed in a sense, because like our biology sort of determines our behavior in a lot of ways. So we end up creating systems, exterior systems that resemble our interior ones, because it's kind of what we know in a way, right?
Yeah. Oh, and also I think these are just like analogous, like these are just sort of, we typically do that because these are just ways that these things can be done in the universe, if that makes sense. Like you need these sort of self-referential complementary sort of systems. So that's mad fascinating. So last thing, just quickly. So there's 195 countries in the world, apparently, right? So if you look at it in that lens and you think like, oh, each country has a prime minister or a president or some ruling body, right? Some person, one person that it sort of all points to, which is the case, but that person isn't in control of the entire country. Like there's many different levels that they've got to go down. But 195 different countries that house these 8 billion people, right? So all of those 8 billion people, in some sense, are spoken for by 195 different people. And then you can chunk it down from that. Like, isn't it just crazy, the scale of things?
That is crazy if you think about it that way.
And this is why statistics, this is why your government ruling body, they can never truly know you as a person because they can't see the individual. All they can see is the coarse grainings, the buckets. And they have to put everybody into different buckets because it's the only way they can manage the number of different people. So this is why, recommendations for everybody aren't always necessarily the best recommendation for the individual, because at that scale, you can't account for the individual. You can only account for the distribution over the people. That kind of makes sense.
I never thought of it that way. 195 people speak for 8 billion.
In some sense, right?
Yeah. That's crazy to think about, though.
So we talk about this Wolfram stuff quite a lot. We've been talking about that observer theory thing, and we're saying about how like all of our observations are coarse grainings, and what we have to do is make equivalences between things. So there's like all this crazy intricacy happening in the world, the universe, and then we equivalence that and we make a coarse graining. And that's us as observers. So when we see something, we're seeing it at a certain high level, and we're making a bunch of equivalences to say that these things are similar, or they're different, and that informs our perception. This is why we see fluids to be continuous, even though we know they're discrete, et cetera, right? So a country is an observer as well, and it doesn't see the individual. It just sees the equivalencing of so it does the same thing. It only sees a coarse graining, and that's why it can't see you as the individual. And this is why the countries, regions, etc., don't optimize for the person. They optimize for the distribution, right? For the whole, which doesn't mean that they're optimizing for you, but they don't even see you, if that makes sense. Just like we can't see the individual water molecules unless we fully zoom in. But if we fully zoom in to look at an individual water molecule, we can't see anything else. right? And so just to reiterate that point is a government, a country, anything beyond probably like 1,000, 150 or 1,000 people or whatever, is going to have to make some sort of course grading. And even at the 150, you're going to have to do it. But just reiterate that at the governmental level, they don't see the individual. They definitely don't optimize for the individual. And so this is where a lot of pain and conflict arises, because people feel like they're hardly done by, and they probably, they could be, but to the big business or to the government, they don't see that. They can't see that because they're having to do these course gradings. They've just lumped you into a bucket. That makes sense.
That's why it's important that we talked about this before, where communities have community members that sort of represent those communities to sort of try and eliminate some of that coarse grading. But then that creates so many levels of governance then, which could also be a whole nother issue, right? Because if you had one person representing 150 people, for example, oh my God, imagine like the levels of it, right? Of how many people you would need to be in those positions and how much organization it would require.
Yeah.
Like each neighborhood, maybe.
Yeah. We could do it. There'd be a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers. But yeah, just, I don't know, the one productive thing I think we can leave on is to understand that, the systems, governments, businesses, anything at sufficient scale can't see the individual, and they can't really care for the individual in that sense. So it is actually up to you. It is up to you to care for yourself, the individual, and try and do the things that best suit you. And yeah, contemplate that. Businesses, corporations, governments, they're all observers too. And they're all doing course gradings. And so that could explain some of the fuckery that happens.
All right, Guy. That's a wrap.
That was a good point. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Have a lovely night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks. And Guy, have a great evening.
You too, bro.
Enjoy that UFC, son.
Yeah, I'm going to go play basketball now for an hour, and then I'm going to watch some UFC.
Nice.
I'll just going to say my picks quickly, just because this is going to be posted after the fight. But I'm going to tell you who I think is going to win. All right, just real quick. So Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. Malley's going to take that. Poirier is going to beat St. Denis. Holland's going to beat Page. I'm not sure about the welterweight division. And then I think Song is going to beat Peter Yan. I don't know if I got other names right. I don't know too much about UFC, by the way. I've just been sort of getting into it recently. But I do like Sugar.
Yeah, it's a cool shot. Well, good luck on that. Hopefully it works in your favor and their favor. Peace, Guy. Have a great night.
Love you, dude. Peace.
Love you too, Guy. Bye.